we all control our own attitude and our perception to what has happened to us or what is happening in front of us. For an example, like over here in the UK, it rains all the time. It's not nice weather, and everyone complains about the weather. And it's like, well, can you control it? No. Well, why waste time, energy, for other examples, money, emotional energy on worrying about something you can't control? So that's one thing that I've really focused on the last couple of years, is controlling my attitude and focusing on the things that I can control and letting go of the things that I can't. And whenever I find myself wanting or, really being upset about something in life or something that has happened, I go, well, can I control it? Can I make a difference? Can I alter this? No? Okay. And it sounds really simple, but I would just go, okay, fine. It's done. It's over. Move on. I don't waste any time or energy on this. And some people say, oh, well, you just don't care. And it's like, well, I do care, but I can't do anything about it. So, what do you want me to do? I'm not going to waste energy, time, and emotional drain on me by worrying about or focusing on something that I can't control or can't alter or can't do anything about.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. I'm Jess, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Coach BJ. And this is the place where we share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. And oh my, our guest today has definitely walked the gauntlet to finding his purpose more than once. We've got Luke Tyburski, extreme adventurer, with us today from London. And like many of you, we first heard Luke's story back in 2015 on the Rich Roll podcast. We've been following him ever since, and perhaps we think we know what he's been up to, but not until the recent release of his book, Chasing Extreme, do we really get the whole story. So Luke, welcome to the show.
It's an absolute pleasure to be on the show, and it's really cool that you guys first heard me back in 2015 when, for the time and where I was at in my journey, I was very open on Rich's podcast for what I had spoken about previously. So people who had never heard of me, or even some of my friends, would hear me first on Rich's podcast and went, wow, like you were really open and honest about a lot of things. And at the time I was like, yeah, I know it's one of the most open times I've ever been. But deep down I was like, yeah, but that's only like 40% of it. So it's really cool that you've got that perspective of when you first heard me, and that's how much I actually opened up. But now, 3.5 years later, here I am, and I've actually told the whole story, and you know it.
Yeah, I know it. I just finished the book this morning. BJ left early for the pool, and I thought, I'm making a cup of tea. I'm going to shorten my meditation. I shortened my meditation for you. And I just binged on those last chapters. And we've been doing a bit of binging. Like I revisited that Rich Roll podcast last week and listened to that. And knowing, what I know now, you can tell that there was some holding back there. But was there really? I mean, it's baby steps. When we're opening up the vault, right, which is what you've done, you've got to kind of take baby steps because, this isn't what you've navigated, really what you've navigated physically, mentally, emotionally. There's no curriculum for this. And we really need to figure it out ourselves. And, that said, being yogis and living a spiritual life that we do, through my own meditation practice, I've found the best and deepest answers come from within, but they also require the biggest amount of bravery to, show up to those answers and execute what it is that I'm being asked of. So you've been meditating, right? Have you been meditating? Mindfulness, I know that was a part of you really healing through this. And what have you found about like answers coming from within?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I unknowingly started meditating when I was 15, which is 21 years ago, when I was playing elite soccer in Australia. But we were told it was relaxation exercises. And I've been doing the similar practices throughout my whole life. I've gone up and down, and there's been periods where I haven't, and there's been periods where I've got right into it. But the last probably 4 years, like I have been a little bit more regular and experimental with my practices. And what I realized is that inner voice that's been inside my head, I've really stopped to listen to it and really tried to understand it, because a long time, especially throughout 2014, 2015, when I did the Ultimate Triathlon, and when I was on Rich's podcast about 3 or 4 months before I actually did the triathlon, the sort of the voices inside my head, it was telling me that I couldn't open up because I was still ashamed of what I was going through, in terms of my depression and my mental health, and also the self-harm in the form of endurance sports. And that's something that I spoke about a lot in Chasing Extreme, my book, is that I was addicted to endurance sports, but at the same time, that was my self-harm. So when I would come back and stop, I would actually understand that that's what I was doing, but it was almost like I didn't have the personal tools to equip myself or to learn to actually try and do something about it.
Yeah, you were for sure. I had this note, and I don't know if they're my words or your words, but it was like you were addicted to just punishing yourself, addicted to beating yourself up. But in a way, isn't that how we can really feel, right? It's because there was a part of you that was screaming to feel what it was that you were going through. And it was almost like, I don't know if you'd agree with this, it's almost like it was displaced as maybe a way of trying to heal yourself, but that, as you know, between those events and after the Ultimate Triathlon, it was all still there. The emotions, the voice, that dark voice in your head, that maybe this was a way for you to feel something along the way, because I've never had the depths of depression that you have experienced, but I've heard it's like a numbness.
It was almost like you're in the middle of a void and you're there, but you can't really feel, and every time you go and walk towards something, it keeps getting further away. So it's like you're in this almost like this big black hole that I actually used that analogy in the book, that I would dig down into this big hole. And then it's like, okay, I'm here. So it's like I was walking around in this bubble that I couldn't really touch anything, but I could still feel everything. So to actually trying to get out of that was sort of like my cry for help. Was I was trying to do all these extreme adventures because I was trying to be part of the world and I guess use all my senses, rather than being in that sort of depression bubble, that depression hole where they would dumb down. Yeah, it was definitely trying to get that next high, talking about addiction. It was the endurance sports were that, because when I was doing them, I felt amazing. I felt alive. I felt like this was living. And then when I wasn't, then the lows were really low. And it wasn't just like some of the bigger challenges. I ran through the desert in Morocco, and I ran down Mount Everest, and I ran through a tropical forest in China, and all these like big international things. But it was as simple as like, I'm having a really low day today. Okay, yeah, I can go and run. And I wouldn't go for an hour run. I'd go for a 5 or 6 hour run. And then that would make me feel great because I'm out doing something and I'm actually feeling life and I'm living it. But then I would come back to reality, and it would all come crashing down, and I would try and get that feeling and those sensations in life back by binge eating and, thinking, when can I go and train again in a different way so I can get those endorphins and feel good about myself, really.
Yeah, so we're starting to talk a little bit about like the adventures that you've had, and can you just, for maybe our listeners that don't know who you are, can you give us a little rundown? I mean, you found something that became your life's pursuit at the age of 4, and at the age of 28 it ended. So can you take us like from basically what that sport was and just that resume of crazy events that you've done?
I find it really interesting that people know like specific details about my life now after reading my book, and it still doesn't sink in initially, because people have these like really specific time frames or details, like you just said, like I started at 4 and to 28, and it's the fact that someone's just read my book. I still find that really funny, like a little kid. But yeah, so I wanted to play soccer ever since I was 4, professional soccer, and I grew up through the ranks in Australia, and I wasn't very good up until I was about 15. That was a combination of me growing into my body and hard work that I would put in through my teenage years, because all I ever wanted to do was play with my friends, and I was never as good as them, so I would never get picked for teams. And I would go home and train, and I would train all by myself. And then a combination of that hard work and, as I said, me growing into my body as a 14-year-old, I started to make representative teams and started to play at an elite level, on a national level. And so then played in the lower professional leagues in Australia, went over to America, played in college, played in the lower professional leagues over there as well. And then went over to Europe to try and crack it over there. I played a little bit in England and went to Belgium. That was an interesting experience, learning a new language and a different culture. And then I landed in London, and I had some football clubs that soccer clubs that wanted me to try with them. And I got injured, and I kept getting injured. I kept breaking down, I kept getting fit, kept breaking down, getting fit. I wasn't really healthy, and I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in for as many years as I was, and that wasn't very good for my health. And then I had 3 surgeries in 11 months when it was at its worst in terms of big injuries, and I just kept breaking down in terms of torn muscles, strained ligaments, things like this. And then at the ripe old age of 28, I decided enough was enough. After all my family and friends told me about 12 months earlier I should give it up. In a knee-jerk reaction, because of a loss of identity, because of I still felt like I had something to prove to myself as an athlete, I decided that I was going to sign up to this big race that was across the desert that was the equivalent of running 6 marathons in 7 days, and it's called the Marathon De Sables, and it was in 6 months by the time I signed up. And I basically had 6 months to go from a broken down injured footballer who was battling with depression but not speaking about it to a single soul at the time, to an ultra endurance athlete who was going to run 155 miles through the desert in 7 days.
Did you
How do you grasp? Like, it doesn't sound like you quite grasped it. You were just like all in. You were like, okay, that sounds cool. Let's do it.
I had never ran 10K before in my life when I signed up to it. So it was almost like I was naive enough to try and stubborn enough to actually get through it. There's a famous quote that's similar to that. I can't remember who it was, but it was something like that. And, I was always willing to push myself in fitness sessions when I played soccer, and I was always willing to do the hard work. And I thought, well, it's just one foot in front of the other. Like, literally, how hard can it be? So I think my naivete was probably my best friend at that period of time. And then I just started to set out to start running. And that's how it all began.
It's you have a documentary on this on your YouTube channel, and of course you talk about it in depth on the book, and day one of the Marathon De Sables, you're having IT band pain and flare up. By day 2, they've had to wrap your feet up, like you called them mummified, like they had to mummify your feet. Day 3, you're hobbling. I mean, and you've got so much far to go. And it's not like at night you're sleeping in plush accommodations. You're basically on the floor of the Sahara Desert underneath a tent that only has 2 sides, and on a carpet, right? Because you had to carry everything.
Yeah, exactly right. You describe really well.
and you did not want to just finish the event, right? You wanted to come in top 50. So this is what intrigues me, because you just go for the top. And I feel, Luke, that there's so many people out there that go into these endurance races just because they want to finish it. I just want to finish an Ironman. I want to finish a half Ironman or whatever it is. But when you boldly, right from the start, go into the top 50, you must have something deep inside that knows, and it could be that naivete. You don't fear what most people fear in that first initial step towards achieving such a big goal.
No, you're right. I knew nothing. I didn't even know what it took to be in the top 50. I just knew that that was sort of well, where all the cool kids hang out. And I thought, that's where I want to be, all the fast cool kids. No, it was for me, it was almost like I felt like I had something to prove to myself still as an athlete. That was part of the reason why I wanted to do this race. And I knew how hard I could push myself. But what did that mean in terms of running 6 marathons in 7 days? I had no idea. But I think in terms of like the thing deep inside me that was going to push me is I was running away from facing up to the fact that I wasn't a soccer player anymore. I had a massive, loss of identity, and that sort of fear, I guess you could call it, that's what was driving me. So it wasn't a case of I'm chasing down the guys in the top 50. It was almost like I was running away from the fact that if I stop running, so to speak, I'm going to have to face up to life. So I thought I'm going to, for the 6 months that I'm going to train for the Marathon De Sables, and it's not like I kept it quiet. I told everyone, I was writing blogs about it, that I'm going to finish in the top 50, and everyone just thought I was crazy and absolute nutcase, which is, to be fair, I probably would have thought the same thing. I just thought, no, I'm going to go for this because I was just running away from life. And I thought, right, okay, so here's this opportunity for me. I can start my new life, and I'm going to be this big endurance adventurer, and I'm going to get my name sort of up there by finishing in the top 50. But it was fueled on fear. It was fueled on trying to prove something to myself. And it had nothing to do with anyone else out in the desert, except for the fact that the guy was talking to me in my mind was saying, you're not a footballer anymore. Now what are you going to do? And I was basically trying to quiet my mind.
And so you talked a little bit about like having those, not being able to pursue the career to the extent that you wanted to pursue it, and then going after this marathon. And even at the end of the marathon, you felt disappointed. That you felt flat, like that you didn't perform to your expectations. And then looking back on the football career, like that didn't meet your expectations either. So what have you learned about, like, what have you found in your soul searching about expectations and how they've informed you and how they will continue to inform you in the future?
That's a great question and a fantastic thread to pull on from my football career and then the Marathon De Sables. I've learned from expectations that I think you should have them of yourself, but I think also you need to put them into perspective when you maybe don't reach them, because I think for me personally, I had the highest of expectations of myself, and it was always not comparing myself to others. It was always to do the best that I could do. So then when I knew I didn't fulfill my potential as a soccer player because of injury cut short, and because I didn't fulfill my potential during the Marathon De Sables because of knee injuries and feet, like I wasn't even tired at the end of some of the days because I couldn't run fast enough to get tired. I couldn't run to sort of like my threshold pace because I was hobbling so bad. So it was just like a really, really slow recovery walk, run the whole days. I think now I've realized I still have high expectations of myself. I'm able now, not then, but now, to take a step back and look at all the things that I did achieve, all the knowledge I did gain, the connections I made, the community I've now involved in. So I'm able to actually look at all the positive takeaways that I got from that. And I don't necessarily look at the gap between where I ended up, where I expected. It was like, okay, this is where I'm at. Now let's see all the positives from this. And that's how I look at life, but that's also how I look at projects, whether they be in business or in my endurance adventuring career as well.
Yeah, because if we're in the darkness, right? And we've all been in the darkness. We all have that voice in our head that says we're not good enough. This wasn't good enough. You didn't perform well enough. You could have gone harder. But if we're putting 100% of our focus on that, then there's no way that we can see all the other things that are available to focus on, which is, what can I be grateful for? What did go well? What did come out of this? Connections with people. Like, you've had some such extreme experiences that the connections that you've made with others has run so deep. And, you know, coming off Marathon De Sables, there might have been some other things in the middle, but the next big thing that I see is the Everest Ultra, where that was like, it's like you just keep up-leveling your suffering because you had like giardia and you had altitude sickness, and that was crazy. But you made these deep connections. You immersed yourself in this beautiful culture. You stayed over there. You lived over there for a while. What did you learn from living? I spent a little bit of time in India with a Tibetan population, and I took so much away from that about just pure contentment and happiness with what you have. And even in that time where, you know, you were still really struggling and you didn't have the toolbox that you have now, what were some things that you took away from that experience of being over in Nepal?
Without sounding dramatic, it literally changed my outlook on life.
Yeah,
But it was almost like it changed it, but I parked it because I wasn't ready to actually use it. So it must have been about 4 weeks high up in the rural mountains where very few Westerners have ever been. A couple of ultra runners who I lived with spoke very little English, but just enough to get by. No running water, no electricity. You know, I slept next to buffaloes, really, really remote. And the people that live in small communities, they live to survive every single day. They were some of the happiest people I've ever met, because it was the connections they made with people. It was their family that made life so special. And it was actually sitting down for a meal where the laughter, you know, I haven't heard people laugh like this before. It was deep, like from the belly, from the soul.
Yeah,
People are so extremely happy, but they had nothing. So in one regard, it definitely changed my life to appreciate the people I have around me and appreciate stopping and enjoying time with others, and also appreciate what you have. And then I came back from Nepal and I started to get rid of a lot of possessions, and I actually minimalized how I lived. But even to this day, like, you look at my wardrobe, if I ever have to move house, I can do it in one bag. You know, apart from my training kit, which takes up too much space because swimming, cycling, and running, you've got to have plenty of kit.
Right.
But in terms of nice clothes to go out, or I got 2 suits, that's it. Couple of nice pairs of trousers, like 2 pairs of jeans, and like that's basically it. So I actually culled a lot of clothes, culled a lot of possessions. I'm in a position now where lots of brands get in contact with me, and I say no to more things than I say yes. If people want to give me free stuff, it's like, most of the time it's saying, no, look, I don't need it. I've got something that works just as well, or actually I don't think I'll use it, so you can just keep it. So I have this mentality where unless I truly need something, I would say 98% of the time, I will turn it down, or I won't try and go and buy something new that's flashy. Because in Nepal, it really showed me that you don't need a whole lot to be extremely happy. But as I said, I learnt this at the time. But apart from actually getting rid of some of my possessions, I parked it for several years before I could come around and retrieve this and actually start living it to the fullest, because it was almost like I was on this journey, and it's a golden nugget piece of knowledge that I learned. But I'm going to come back and get it. And that's what I did sort of in 2016 and 17, because I went to Nepal in 2013.
I remember the night before I came back from India calling BJ and saying, you're going to have to watch me when we get back, because I want to give everything away. I just want to give everything away. And like you said, the laughter, it wasn't coming from like, oh, that was a funny thing that you said. It was like a state of being. And I had a very similar experience spending time with Tibetan refugees over in India. And it does give you this, like you, it changed me forever. That trip changed me forever. But there was a part of you that knew, right? So there was that darkness, I think, that knew like, he's got like the keys to the kingdom. He's got, like, you went and you saw pure joy and happiness as a way of life. And so there was that darkness that was not ready to let that in. But the beautiful thing is that you kept it and you still remember it and you can still recall it. And now it can be a part of your life. that you don't have to block it out anymore because the vault is open, right? Like you've pulled the plug on the darkness, and to the point where, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is that when we do open up, when we do become vulnerable, it's like you can't go back from that. Like you set yourself on this trajectory of freedom, and it doesn't mean that you won't still have days that you don't feel good or you're disappointed with your performance, but it doesn't, I mean, you can answer this. Does it have the same hold on you as it did before?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. So one of the things that I have worked on a lot that's really helped me is understanding that we all control our own attitude and our perception to what has happened to us or what is happening in front of us. For an example, like over here in the UK, it rains all the time. It's not nice weather, and everyone complains about the weather. And it's like, well, can you control it? No. Well, why waste time, energy, for other examples, money, emotional energy on worrying about something you can't control? So that's one thing that I've really really focused on the last couple of years is controlling my attitude and focusing on the things that I can control and letting go of the things that I can't. And whenever I find myself wanting or, really being upset about something in life or something that has happened, I go, well, can I control it? Can I make a difference? Can I alter this? No? Okay. And it sounds really simple, but I would just go, okay, fine. It's done. It's over. Move on. I don't waste any time or energy on this. And some people say, oh, well, you just don't care. And it's like, well, I do care, but I can't do anything about it. So what do you want me to do? I'm not going to waste energy, time, and emotional drain on me by worrying about or focusing on something that I can't control or can't alter or can't do anything about. That's been one of the key things for me over the last few years is really letting go of the things that, as I said, like I can't alter, I can't do anything about, and focusing on the things that I can.
Letting go is such a big one because I think detachment is one of the things that, we're, as humans, we're here to learn because, when it all is said and done, eventually we have to detach from our bodies when we leave this earth. And so detachment is a big one and letting go is a big one. You know how it is when you've got those thoughts that are just hammering you, and you're like, okay, I got to let it go. I got to let it go. I got to let it go. But it just keeps hammering you and hammering you. How do you let go? Like, what's kind of the how behind letting go for you?
I've actually had quite a few conversations around this topic this week, which is a perfect way to finish the week. We're recording on a Friday. And it starts with knowing why I want to do what I want to do and how I want to live my life. So whatever I'm trying to let go of, it's like, why do I want to let go? So it's really understanding that, and then it's how I want to live my life. So the way that I live my life now is really simple. I have a life philosophy that I've developed over the years. It's evolved. It will evolve again. And it's to build relationships, learn daily, and teach others what life has taught me. Now, I get out of bed, and the rest of the day before I get back into bed, they're my guiding principles. That's what keeps me on track to living my best life. And if I'm not building relationships, and if I'm not learning, and if I'm not teaching others or helping others, or a combination of the three, then over the years, I've understood that I don't want to be a part of a life where I'm not doing that. So it comes down to, is the things that I'm trying to let go of, are they part of the life that I want to live as Luke, as an individual, and as part of a relationship with my wife? If it's not, then I'm happy to let it go because it's like excess baggage. It's going to drag me down. And I've let go of relationships. I've stopped speaking to friends who I've known my entire life, and I've stopped doing things that I did my entire life because it's like they're not helping me move forward. Yes, it's difficult when you start sort of discarding some things in your life and letting go, but it's like anything. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. You're letting go of some negative people in your life because you're actually going to meet other people who are more positive and love what you're doing to help you move forward.
Yeah, you need to create that space. You need to create that space to welcome in all these great things that are going to happen. I know we learned that when we when we minimized and downloaded, downsized our entire lifestyle. And even to this point where we're living in, a tiny 400 square foot.
It's funny because actually we did end up giving everything away. It just took a little bit longer than the day I got back from India.
But it opened up so much more, Luke. It's opened up so much more opportunity. And you're so right. It's just like with everything else, the fear is only there because we haven't done it, right? The more, this in training and racing and all these endurance events that we do, it's the more you do it, the more it becomes the norm. So why can't you apply that same strategy to everything in your life? Just everything that is unknown to you, explore it and make it unknown. Therefore, you have no little hidden pockets or things that scare you or bring you fear, because you can speak to it and you faced it.
100%. And one of the other things that I keep in mind, and whether it started in doing the endurance adventures that I do, but it's also I come back into my everyday life. If I do come at a crossroads where it's like, oh, this is something completely new for me, I'm not sure if I should do this. Riding Chasing Extreme, how brutally honest. Great example. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. Should I? I'm scared. There's a lot of fear going on. And I actually stop and I start talking to myself and says, okay, first step, could I die? No, I'm not going to die from writing a book. Okay, that's cool. Okay, could I get injured? Well, apart from a paper cut or, carpal tunnel syndrome from typing, no, I'm not going to get injured. Okay, is it going to hurt me another way, like emotionally or anything like that? And it's like, well, it could, but it's going to be short-lived. But then the flip side to that is, can I create something, or am what I'm doing, the reason why I'm having these conversations with myself, is it contributing to the world? Yeah, writing a book, being brutally honest about my story, I think it is. I think it can open the minds of people to see that we're capable of so much more, that people who do big endurance sports and set big goals still suffer from mental health doing life. So it was like, okay, yes, I'm going to write this book. But that can come down to relationships, that can come down to anything, is I will ask myself that question, can I die? So building a new relationship with this person, if I hang around this person, do I think I'm going to die? Actually, yeah, because he's way crazier than I am. He takes too much risk. I think I could. I'm not going to spend time with him. So, it sounds weird, but this is the process I go through. Am I contributing to the world? Yes, I'm going to do it. No, then I'm probably not going to do it. And that's the process I go through.
That's a really high level way of living, is looking at it of, is this for the greater good? Is what I'm doing for the greater good? And so we've got our own personal will, and you are very familiar with that will. You have a very strong will. You've willed yourself to many finish lines. You willed yourself to show up at all these football camps, like trying to get a contract, and all this stuff, you guys, is in the book. You just have to read the book, because we are leaving out 95% of the juicy details, and they're all in the book. But you have such a strong will. And then there's also this higher will, this higher power will, the divine will, which is really it's your highest self, your truest self. And that's the one that's here to fulfill your purpose, to fulfill and get to the other side of all of the things that you're here to get to the other side of. And the difference, I think, between the personal will and the divine will is, the personal will is just out for me. It's out for Luke. I got to prove something to myself because I didn't meet my expectations. And of course, it's when you're in it, it's hard to see it. But then we can take that will and we can merge it in with the higher will. And now our purpose in life and the things that we do, it's for the greater good. It's for everyone. It's in service. And being in service is, I think, it's such an incredible way to process energy, to overcome really energy and thoughts that don't serve us, that are harming to ourselves. It gives us purpose in this life. I think it creates compassion, because we can say to these people oh man, I've been there. I've been there too. I see where you are. I've been there. And I hope my experience will help you get out of what you're in. And then it also, I think, creates some self-worth, that we're seeing that our experiences, that your experience, Luke, of writing this book and becoming vulnerable is going to help other people who are, let's say, thinking about writing a book, but they've got those chapters that they just don't want to include yet. And I know I've heard on a podcast before that you had a lot of this book written, and you said, yeah, it would have been a good book. It would have been an adventurous book and all of that. But then you had a friend, I think, who helped you write the book, and you said to her, well, why don't you explain like what you said to her? Like, I'm going to send you some things, right? And like, once I send them to you, they're in the book.
Yeah, so I initially thought my experience in Nepal would be a great adventure book, and I thought, because it's something that very few people would do, so right, I'm going to write a book there. I met up with met some people who became my friends, who sort of helped me start the book, so I had no idea how to do it. So I was going to write it, and I was going to finish at the end of my Nepal trip. And I'm writing a couple of hours every day, getting through it. I wrote about 80,000 words. 60,000 words maybe. And then life happened. So relationship breakdown, started with insomnia, sleeping about 5 or 6 hours a week, started binge eating, and was just really not in a good place. And as I said, life happens. A couple of years went by, the ultimate triathlon came about and finished. And a good friend of mine, she said to me, you should write a book about the ultimate triathlon because it's crazy. And you've got the documentary about it. Now you should write the book. I said, yeah, it's a good idea. And she said, we'll do a bit of backstory about your life and all the other adventures. And I said to her, well, I've actually already wrote a bit of a book about that. So I sent her the 60,000 words or 70, whatever it was, which is quite a decent sized manuscript already. And she just read it, and it was up to basically the end of Nepal. And she was like, this is amazing. Like, this is crazy. I said, yeah, like definitely I'll help you out. Said, you write it all and then I'll help structure it. And basically I said to her, right, there's like 2-year gap here. There's a lot of stuff that went on and I'm going to make a deal with you. And she's clueless. She knew nothing about my depression. No one did. It was nothing about anything. And I said, right, whatever I send to you, she'd moved back to Australia from London at the time. Whatever I send to you is fair game. It goes in the book, no matter what it is. And she's on the other end of the phone going, yeah, sure. And I said, no, whatever I write, it's in the book. And I made this decision just then that I'm going to be completely open and honest because one, I trusted her, and two, I thought this was an opportunity for me to tell the whole story. I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to progress in my self-development, actually getting it all out. Like, I didn't think far ahead to the fact that it's going to be out there in the big world for people to read, but I was just like, yeah, writing it will be great. I said to her, whatever I send is fair game, and she's okay. So I started writing stuff to her, and some of the stuff that I hadn't even spoken out loud before. And as soon as I send it, I'm freaking out and I'm Googling how to unsend email and going, oh no, I can't believe I sent that. And because the time difference, she's in bed, and then I go to bed and I get up and I get a message from her and it says, are you okay? That's it. Because she just knew what I'd sent her was just going to rip me up to the core. And it was a very cathartic experience to write it, but I would be lying to say that I didn't cry a lot of the times when I was writing stuff and typing at the same time. On one side, I was like, I have to get this out. But then on the other side of it, I'm crying. I'm literally crying tears going, I'm reliving this and it's painful. But as I've also said, I would vomit on the page and Jane would sort of take the ingredients and turn it into a five-course meal, cultivate it into the 105,000 words that it is. And she helped sort of say, strengthen this. We're removing that because no one cares what you had for breakfast on Tuesday, the 7th of June in 2016.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised. Yeah. But you know, there's no mistakes. Like, I don't think there's any mistakes in this journey of life that we live, and it's so perfect. Like, you come back from Nepal, and the story of the Everest Ultra, I have to tell you, when I first heard that you did the Everest Ultra, I was like, oh, that sounds good, like a downhill ultra. Maybe I'll do that. And then I read that chapter and I was like, I am never doing that. That's insane, because it's not just downhill. It's crazy. But so you think like, okay, yeah, it's good. Like, I've got that, all that great stuff from Nepal. And then you fall into like, just life happens and, you know, you're in the depression. Now you're starting, you know, just self-destructive behaviors and binge eating and all of this. And then the ultimate triathlon, which you describe, which I it was so perfect because I was feeling the same thing. And then when I read these words in the book, that the ultimate triathlon was like your overdose, that the ultimate triathlon was as amazing as it was. And there's a documentary on Amazon for Prime members. You got to see that. But then you also include stuff that in the book that's not in the documentary. So you got to do both. But coming off of that, at the end of the documentary, they're interviewing your wife, and she's your girlfriend at the time. And she says, if it all went to plan, she felt like if everything went to plan at the ultimate triathlon, she felt like that wouldn't have been, you would have felt that wasn't enough. Like it wasn't enough for you, And so, and I was really digesting those words after watching the movie. And I was thinking, gosh, this is like, as ultimate as it was, I think it's actually the ultimate rock bottom.
Yeah, 100%, because it forced me to stop physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I think if I did it, and I did the 2,000 kilometers in 12 days from Morocco to Monaco, which is the ultimate triathlon, and if I did everything and it went to plan, it was perfectly, completed, I think I would have went, well, okay, I need to do something bigger. Almost like I need something to break me. It did break me in so many ways, but more so it forced me to stop and look within, because now I couldn't have this thing that I always relied on. I didn't exercise for nearly 18 months because of physical health issues. So you learn a little bit about my mental strength in the documentary, and you read in the book a little bit more in depth of how I'm able to do that. But what the Ultimate Triathlon actually did afterwards was my brain was still going, yep, right, let's go, let's do this. But my body was just like, okay, we get it. My mind is stronger than my body. Now, like, I want everyone to listen and understand that. My mind is so much stronger than my body, which is normally the other way around for most people, is the fact the only way that my body could get my mind to listen and to take notice was it to literally start shutting down. So different systems in my body started shutting down. And I won't go into detail because it's all in the book and stuff. If I didn't have that, I still think I would have been on this sort of exercise drug-induced binge that was 4 years of my life doing all these extreme adventures. But because it actually made me stop physically, mentally, and emotionally, and it did break me, and it was my overdose and it was my rock bottom, I realized I had so many people who were worried about me, and they were worried not just about what I was going to do next, but they were worried about my actual physical health and like long term. Like, was I going to be okay in 10 years? Because some of the stuff that was happening with me, there could have been long term. So I thought, okay, how I actually want to live. And I actually had to spend the time to look within and go, how actually do I want to live my life?
I can speak to when I first started racing triathlon, especially long distance. Like, it wasn't long before I got up into the long distance because it breaks you down more. I liked that. And I'm the first to admit that when I first started in endurance sports, I was definitely running from myself, but you can't run from yourself forever. So if the ultimate triathlon wasn't the one that broke you, you were going to pursue it so perfectly until you got to that point of so much pain and that you had to get clear, and what happened was your body stopped and you couldn't train. I mean, to take a day off for some athletes is so difficult, and you had to not train for 18 months. So, as extreme as the adventures were that you were doing, just as extreme was your healing that came after the ultimate triathlon, which I think is like such a gift. I mean, it's such a gift. When you look back, I mean, can you see just the perfection in the plan?
I realized just how important it was at that time to understand what I was doing to myself as a whole being. My wife is amazing. She was a guiding light. She really would she understands me. There's only one person that understands me more, and that's my mum, and I have a very close relationship with my mum, but she understands me so much, and she would just give me things to think about. just drop a little thought into my mind, and she would know that I couldn't just disregard it. And I would think about it, and I would think about it, and I'd start pulling on that a little bit. So it got to a point where I realized, yeah, this is the best thing that's actually happened to me. I've had to check off what's important in my life.
And the thing that she did for you is that she let you suffer. And I think that that's something that's so important. You know, she knew she couldn't take away your pain, but to allow you to have your full experience so that you could have your full, you know, uncovering and healing and getting back into the light. So one thing I wanted to touch upon, because we've gotten this question before from our listeners, and so I know that there's some listeners out there right now who are struggling with this, is the binge eating. And, you know, do you have any tips for them or any advice or guidance as to how you navigated, you know, away from that, or maybe you haven't, or how at least that you're, you know, conscious of the eating now? Because I know a lot of people struggle with that. We've had questions about it. And so is there any tips that you can give them or advice from your own experience?
Oh, yeah, that's a big question. I actually didn't do anything to try and stop that, because that was just a byproduct of where I was at in life. And it was trying to fill a void. So I was trying to spend more time on understanding who I was and how I wanted to live my life. And when I sort of started to progress with that, and there were times where I still had binge eating episodes, it was because I wanted to I would have low days because I didn't really understand what else I needed in my life. And to make me feel good, like the whole dopamine binge, I had some food, makes me feel good for a minute and I feel rough. What I would suggest to people is know that you're not alone, and the people who truly care about you, they may not understand, but they will support you. Apart from my wife, no one knew about my binge eating until my book came out, or at least the pre-release when I gave it to family and friends towards the end of last year. But when I first started to talk about it with my wife, because I was very ashamed of this, like she didn't quite understand, but she was supportive. Being open as much as you can to people who are really close to you, it will make a difference, because you realize you're not alone. And binge eating is something that you do alone. You don't do it with a group of friends. If you can find support, whether it's your spouse or your friends or your sibling or your parents or training partners who you're close with, then I think life will get a little bit easier, because you'll start talking about your binge eating, but it won't just be about that. You'll start to understand more of what's missing, and maybe you and other people can help you find that together.
Yeah, so it's not like this dirty little secret, because it doesn't need to be a dirty little secret. And I think you really nailed it. It's almost like the alcohol to the alcoholic. It's really just the byproduct. It's the solution, not the problem. And it's what is holding you back from living a fulfilling life. And so it's always that deep inner work, and it's trusting that people love you as they say they love you, and that they will meet you and support you. And those who won't, then don't need to be in your life. And it's okay. Like as you have had people fall away, we have also had people fall away from our life.
Okay.
And it's okay. And then I want to finish it up with, you share a mantra in the book, and I just love it, and would love for you to expand on it a little bit. The mantra is, clarity is the eternal energy that fuels our dreams. And it seems to me that you have experienced a lot of clarity over the last few years. And how do you feel that clarity informs, you now and your future?
A thought that just popped into my head once about what is this energy that helps us move forward. And I was like, well, knowing why you do something can help. And it's like, well, it's more than just knowing why. And I thought it just sort of came into my head, and I wrote it down, which is great because I normally forget things like this. And I just continued to use it. And I speak around the world on topics of mindset and my endurance sports. And I use it always at the end, because the way I sum it up is, if we are clear in how we want to live our life, then no matter what obstacle comes across us or whatever setback we have, is that we will be able to dig deep within ourselves and find that energy and find that solution, because we know the purest and the real reason why we're doing it in the first place. So we'll be willing to do whatever is needed to adapt. And I think that goes from taking that first step out the door on a Monday morning to go to work if you're really struggling with your mental health, or that's with a relationship, or that's with anything in life. It doesn't have to be sport. I just really have spent the time, and I mentioned this earlier, is whatever I do something or whenever something comes into my life, it's like, why? If I'm going to spend the time, effort, energy, money, or whatever it is, and if I can understand why, that I can create that clarity. But if I don't have that clarity in something, I don't understand it, and I don't think it's going to be valuable to me or valuable to others, I will just move it to the side. So it's almost like my screening process. If I can't get the clarity in what it is or something I'm trying to do, then I just remove it, or I don't let it come into my life.
I love it. Yeah. Clarity, I think, is gold. I think it's the potent potion for, moving forward in our life from where we are and seeing the truth of how we're moving through the world. And if we want to continue along those paths or switch it or, change our message or look deep within to, for some healing that may be really asking for us to look at. The book is Chasing Extreme. We're so psyched to have had this convo with you. Where can people get the book?
Yeah, so people can get the book on Amazon all around the world. That's really simple. It's called Chasing Extreme. Yeah, I've got to throw it out there. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you liked it, leave a review, because that helps me apparently. Everyone says it, and I don't understand why, but I'm just going to say it as well. So leave a review. That'd be great. But you can also reach out to me on social media at Luke Tyburski. And if you want to find everything that I do, you can go to luketyburski.com, and I've got my own short little podcast, and I've got videos of all my adventures, which you can get a documentary for the Ultimate Triathlon on Amazon Prime as well. And if you want to come and say hi, then just drop me a note and I'll reply to you.
Awesome. And what's next for you?
I'm going on a holiday this year. Finally, it's been so long.
Oh, you're just going to relax. Just relax.
I never said that. I said I'm going on a holiday. That's different. I have never been to Ireland. And I thought, since I live in England, I thought I should go to Ireland. And I'm going to run the length of Ireland by myself, self-supported, carrying a backpack, picking up food and water along the way, and run it in 9 days. So basically, I'm going to be running about 700 kilometers in 9 days, which is the equivalent to about a marathon and 2/3 a day for 9 days, sleeping under trees and in fields and stuff like that. And that's my summer holiday.
That's insane.
It sounds amazing.
It does sound amazing. It sounds amazing, actually. You're going to have a lot of time for self-reflection and clarity.
Clarity, for sure.
So are you going north to south or south to north?
I thought I'd make it more difficult and go uphill and go from south to north.
Nice. And when are you going to do this?
Yeah, looking at my calendar, it's the 25th of June I'm starting. And yes, just because the days will be really long. So I thought it would be a lot nicer to do it when it's light for longer. But also the reason why to go over what I just mentioned is I haven't done a out and out proper adventure, like in the purest term, where it's just me and an adventure, basically. I haven't done that for a long time, because the Ultimate Triathlon, I had a crew, even though very small, 4 people, and I did a 500-kilometer triathlon last summer, but I had a crew and I had a film cameraman there as well, and I've done other races, and it's been years since I've done an out-and-out adventure, and I felt like I needed to sort of go back to the roots of where it all began, where it's just me getting lost in the world. But this is in a very safer place than, say, running through a tropical forest in China.
Yeah,
where no one spoke the language.
Yeah, I think that was the craziest That's the craziest like chapter in the book, but also the most beautiful because of all the kindness that you received from people. Is crazy. But yeah, that was insane. I think this is going to be maybe a level down from that. Hopefully a level down from that, because I think you almost died in that one. Are you going to document this one?
Yeah, I definitely need it. Yeah, I will. I'll be sharing each day on social media so people can see what it's like. I haven't decided if I'm going to actually like take a GoPro and film parts of it, because the reason why I want to go and just have an adventure by myself, you know, like they speak the language, my phone works there, I'll have plenty of money. It is, you know, I know it sounds crazy, but it is only like just over a marathon and a half a day. I've got the whole day to do it. I've got no plans to do anything else. So it's just really me and myself and a bit of running, bit of walking, bit of laughing. So do I want the added pressure that I'm trying to make a short little film about it? I'm not sure. I'll probably decide the night before when I'm packing, if I'm honest.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like exactly what you need to do. So we'll be looking forward to following that. And thank you so much, Luke. I know it's late over there in London, so we appreciate your time and really, really grateful to be connected with you.
It's been my pleasure, and I followed you guys for a while now, so it's amazing to be on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to all the feedback from the listeners as well. So let us know.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks.